So now we come, if we know that the Rebbe told us that we looked at, right, that everything is ready for Geulah, we looked at the Medrash, it's all connects together, we're all ready. So our next topic now is HaGeulah Ketalich. Okay, the Geulah itself, as we're going to see, I'll just read this first beginning and then I'll hand over. So as we've now learned in this chapter 23 that we just finished, the Sichos rabbis, in many sichos, and specifically in the later years, Mara Rebbe Keta Misrachish Ba'olam Ke'ein Talich Tivi, Ba Yehudi HaGeulah Miskashmin B'Haiva B'Tzad Achartzad. So we saw specifically in the later years, like in Aleph and Beis, where the Rebbe showed us how we can see this natural progression, a very natural progression where the testimonies, the things that are going to happen, that we were told in the voice that are going to happen, the times of Mashiach, are starting to actually physically happen one step at a time. Either as an example of the preparation, or even the Rebbe said, as if it's the beginning of the physical manifestation of the complete Geulah. So what we're going to do now is to see how the Rebbe showed us a number of events that were taking place as a progression of Mashiach. Okay. But before we look at the very specific examples that the Rebbe gave, there are two main concepts, main ideas that we must keep in mind when we look at this idea. Okay, and the number one, we first of all we have to understand the idea behind these things. Right? So first of all, as a concept, how is it that we can talk about the things that were said about Geulah? How can we say that they're happening when we are still actually in Galus? And why is it? So not only how can we say these prophecies of Geulah are already happening while we're in Galus, but also why does Geulah happen in this kind of progression? Okay, why isn't it just like bam, it's all here? Why do we have to see these natural things happening in the world? And second of all, we have to understand lahavin as a hevdel ben bigat gishasa shel harebi leinyan zeh legishas acheres medabros gam ken albias hagula betal tevi kima sharebi shala shala gishas elu bachlatos of the charifos. So the second thing that we want to understand is, right, if we say that these things are happening, that it has to be of a physical way, how is this approach of the Rebbe different to other people who also talk about the Geulah as a natural progression, like one step at a time? And the Rebbe vehemently argues, like very, very sharply, with that opinion, the opinion of other people who seem to be saying something similar, as we're going to see. Okay, so we want to understand again, how is it that we can say the aspects of Geulah, the prophecies of Geulah have begun while we're still in Galus, number one. And number two, how is it when the Rebbe says that, what does the Rebbe mean when he says that versus what other people say, this idea of, well, the Geulah is beginning, and the Rebbe very sharply disagrees. So that's what we want to look at in this chapter. So we'll start with Geulah Bisman Hazeh. So what do we mean when we say we have these prophecies of Geulah even right now? So we've got Bobby or Liba. Some of you want to, Liba, would you like to take over?
Yes. Okay, גאולה בזמן הזה. כלל גדול בפנימיות התורה בכלל, ובתורתו של הרבי בפרט, הוא שהתורה היא נצחית ולמעלה מהזמן. Okay, there's a big rule in the Pnimis Torah, and especially in the Rebbe's Torah, that the Torah is internal and above the time. ולפיכך, אף סיפורי התורה שיראו לכאורה בזמן מתרחשים שוב ושוב בכל הזמנים. ויש להם משמעות והוראה נצחית בכל הזמנים ובכל המצבים. And that's why all the stories of the Torah, even though they happen in a certain time, they're happening again and again in all the times, and they have a meaning and an internal hierarchy in all the times and all the situations. ולכן, כאשר יהודי לומד תורה, להתבונן ולראות כיצד סיפורים אלו חוזרים על עצמם בחייו הוא, ולהבין את משמעות הדברים אליו בהווה. And that's why when a Yid is learning Torah, he has to discern and see how those stories are repeating themselves in his own life, and to understand the meaning of those things for him in the present. וכשם שהדברים נכונים לגבי עניינים שבעבר, כך הם נכונים לגבי עניינים שבעתיד, כנבואות הגאולה, שגם עליהם חל הכלל הנ"ל, שהתורה היא נצחית. So as it's about different things that happened in the past, it's the same about different inyanim that will be in the future, like the prophecies about the Geulah. That also on them, we have the same rule that the Torah is internal. כפי שאפשר לראות זאת בסיפור הגמרא, אודות אחד מחכמי ישראל, שעמד לפני מלך פרס, וכשהמלך ראה שאבנתו של היהודי אינו חגור במקומו, קם מכיסאו, הין את אבנתו באומרו, ממלכת כהנים, כתיב וכולי. assume, no?
Oh, and you. So what is that saying?
So there's a story in the Gemara about one of the Al Chachamim that stood before the king of Paras, and when the king saw that the chagura,
Belt.
It's like his belt.
the belt of the Yid is not it's not closed in the right place. So the king got up and he fixed the belt and he said, "You are Mamlechas Kohanim v'Goy Kodesh." קם לבית המדרש, אמרו לו חבריו, קיים בך והיו מלכים לפנייך. So when he went back to the Beit Medrash, his friends told the Chacham that you see, it's the process of that the king will be your servant already happened by you. הרי לנו, שאף שהנבואה והיו מלכים אומנייך נאמרה על זמן העתיד, אף על פי כן ראו חז"ל את המאורע הנ"ל כהשתקפות של הנבואה והתגשמותה בהווה. So we see from here that even though there's nevuah about the kings will be your servant, it's said about the future, but still Chazal looks at this event and they say, you see that this is the reflection of the future nevuah and how it's happening in the present.
Okay, so we see here something that's kind of
וזו מידה בתורה.
one segue. So we're seeing here like a new idea, right? Because we always know that everything that happened, right? That's the idea. That's something that happens in the past. We have to find purpose for it right now, right? This is something we know. But what we're saying here is that it's not just something that happens in the past, but if the Torah is nitzchi, it's not just that we have to find in the stories of our past the relevance for us today. It also means that any nevuahs for the future, we also have to find how it applies today. So when something occurs in our lives, we have to both look at the past and we have to look forward. In our lives, we have to look and see, okay, where has something like this happened before in our history, in the Torah, to our Avos, to our Imais, to anywhere in Tanakh, and learn from it. And the same way, we have to look forward to any nevuah of the future and recognize that it happened. And that's what this story was about. So it's a time, the Gemara says, right? A chacham went and the king, a Goyish king, got up and fixed his belt. And they said, look, that's the nevuah about what's going to happen in the future, that the kings of the world are going to serve you. And look, it's already happened. So we see that it's not a new thing. It's not something that the Rebbe only did, but this is an accepted thing, even in the Gemara, that something that happened, they applied the nevuah of the future to that situation. And again, it comes because Torah is Yitzchak, Torah is
slow.
eternal, and because Torah is eternal, therefore we can learn from before and we can learn from the future. Okay, and go ahead.
וזו מידה כל דבר שהיה בכלל ויצא מן הכלל ללמד, לא ללמד על עצמו יצא, אלא ללמד על הכלל כולו יצא. So there is one of the rules in the Torah that when there is something that it's part of a general thing, and then it speaks about it separately, so it came up, we talk about it separately because it has to teach something not only about this separate thing, but also teaches something about the whole general opinion. ובענייננו, שהנהגת חז"ל לקשר בין הנבואה העתידה למציאות בהווה, ללמד על הכלל כולו יצא, שכל ענייני הגאולה שיהודי לומד עליהם בתורה, הרי הוא צריך להתבונן ולחפש את המשמעות שלהם אליו בהווה. So also in our opinion, when we talk about connecting the future prophecy with the reality in the present, so it teaches us about all the Geulah, not only about this detail of that the kings will be servants, but it teaches us about all the prophecies of the Geulah, of the future, that we have to find the meaning and the connection to our present. או להפך, שכאשר יהודי רואה מאורע חיובי בעולם, עליו לראות זאת כמעין ודוגמת התגשמות יהודי הגאולה המובטחים בתורה. Or just the opposite, when we see something that happens, something positive that happens now in the world, we have to look and to see how it can be an example of the completion of the prophecies about the Geulah, that's a promise in the Torah. ובהתאם לכך, אנו אכן מוצאים בתורת החסידות בכלל, ובשיחותיו של הרבי בפרט, שמראה כיצד כבר בהווה ישנה מעין ודוגמת יהודי הגאולה העתידיים. And according to that, we can find in the Chassidus in general, and especially in the Chassidus of the Rebbe, they show us how now in the present, we have already an example of the future prophecies about the Geulah. זאת ועוד, כפי שהתבאר לאל פרק ז', הגאון הרמב"ם, מנהגו של עולם. Okay, so even more so, we explain in the 7th chapter that the Geulah is showing us like in a natural way. And like the Rambam said, that the world will be behaving like it used to be. וכיוון שבדרך הטבע, שינויים כלליים ומהותיים אינם מתרחשים בהרף עין, אלא בתהליך ארוך הנמשך על פני שנים ודורות, לפיכך גם בגאולה האמיתית אפשר לראות תהליך טבעי רב שלבי הנמשך על פני דורות רבים. Okay, so in a natural way, big changes and essential changes are not happening in 1 second, but usually it's a procedure that takes even years and even generations. And that's why when we speak about the Geulah, so we can see it's also a procedure that with a lot of steps, which takes a few generations. ותהליך זה החל בעצם כבר בעמידתו של אברהם אבינו, שהתחיל להאיר ולגלות ידיעת השם בעולם, ועוד יותר על ידי משה רבנו וכל הנביאים, הוא מוסיף והולך מדור לדור, שידיעת השם הולכת ומתפשטת בעולם בכמות, והולכת ומעמיקה באיכות, עד לשלמות בזה בגאולה השלמה. So this procedure started actually when Avraham Avinu was, when he stood up and he started to discover and light Hashem's, to know, start knowing Hashem in the word, and even more so by Moshe Rabbeinu and all the prophets, and it's going and adding more and more in every generation, that knowing Hashem is spreading in a quantity in the world, and even deeper and also in quality, till the Geulah will be revealed, and until the completion of it in the Geulah. ובאותו קו הרבי מדבר על התגלות תורת החסידות בדורות האחרונים, שזוהי הכנה בדרכי הטבע למצב של מלאה הארץ דעה את השם. In the same way, the Rebbe speaks about the discovery of the Chassidus in the later generations, but this is a preparation in a natural way to the situation where Hashem will be revealed in the world. ומובן שכשם שהוא בנוגע לעניין העיקרי של הגאולה, התגלות ידיעת השם בעולם, כך הוא גם בנוגע לכל שאר ענייני הגאולה, שכולם באים בתהליך רב דורות ההולך ומתעצם. So like it's about the main issue of the Geulah, knowing Hashem, that this is going and being more and more spread, so too is also about all the other inyanim of the Geulah, that all coming in a way of procedure that takes generation and it goes and becomes bigger and bigger. ויהודי יכול וצריך להתבונן בתהליך זה, ולראות היכן אנו אוחזים בתהליך הכללי לקראת הגאולה השלמה בפועל, כפי שיבואו הדברים בפרטיות בעזרת השם בפרק הבא. So he can and he has to look at this procedure and to see where we are standing now in this big procedure, and like we'll see it in the next chapter.
Yep. Okay. One more paragraph for tonight.
Okay.
So we're saying, because this is based on the Rambam, who's saying that Adam Kiminage Naeg, and the whole procedure is going to be B'derech HaTeva. Okay. So B'derech HaTeva, we know there is a process. Okay. So now our question is, okay, so we know it's a process. So where do people go wrong when they talk about this process?
אך כנ"ל, ישנן גישות אחרות המדברות גם כן על גאולתם של ישראל, בדרך שלכאורה דומה להנ"ל, בדרך הטבע בתהליך רב שלבי. Okay, so there are different approaches that speak about the Geulah. It seems in a similar way, like the Rebbe speaks about procedure. ועל פי זה, רואות בהקמת שלטון יהודי בארץ ישראל, בדור האחרון, כעניין ששייך ועד להתחלה של גאולת ישראל. And according to that, they look at the state of Israel, that in our generation, that it's the beginning of the Geulah. וכנ"ל, הרבי שולל בדבריו גישות אלו בהחלטיות ובחריפות. Like we said, the Rebbe is, I say שולל, he is against those approaches very definitely and very sharply. ולפיכך צריך להגדיר ולהבהיר את ההבדלים העקרוניים בין תהליך הגאולה שהרבי מדבר עליו לגישות הנ"ל. ולעניות דעתנו אפשר להגדיר זאת בארבעה נקודות. Okay, so that's what we have to differentiate between the principle, the different differences between what the Rebbe speaks about and about what the nationalists talk about. And that's 4 different points.
So again, here we see Mania Saitenu. I just want to point out that remember when we started learning the Sefer, we said that mostly we see that this is written very much based on exactly the words of the Rebbe. And whenever it's not quoted directly from the Rebbe, we see Lanius Daitenu. So the authors of this Sefer, Yanash Mashiach, are saying that based on what they understand, when you look at the differences between the Zionistic approach of Hiskal the Geulah and that we can do certain things to make the Geulah happen versus the Rebbe, there's 4 main differences. Okay, what are those differences? Aleph.
הרבי מדגיש שאין גאולה ללא מלך מבית דוד, ולפיכך כל תהליכי הגאולה שעד לעמידתו של מלך מבית דוד אינם מוגדרים כגאולה ולא כהתחלתא דגאולה, אלא כהכנה אליה בלבד. Okay, so the Rebbe speaks, there's no Geulah without the king of Beis David. And that's why all the procedures of the Geulah till the king will be there, it's not part of the Geulah, it's not the beginning of the Geulah, it's only a preparation for the Geulah. Okay, that's really a major thing, because by them it was interesting. I was like by the Zionists, they speak about Geulah, and Beis Hamikdash and Yerushalayim. Everything is fine, we have everything, but there's no word about Mashiach by them.
Yeah, and not only that, it was interesting that this morning, actually, I was giving a share, And someone said to me that they had just been in Eretz Yisrael and they took a tour. They took a tour like in the old city, in the Rovav Yehudi, and they said the tour guide told them, a frum man, that the Rabbanim in Eretz Yisrael, the Rabbanim in the old city, wherever, have all said that if only the government would allow the Yidden to go and start building the Beis Hamikdash, the Mashiach would come, right? So that everything's ready, right? And it's halachic, and I said to her, and she said, I don't understand. So why isn't it like that? And she said, it's according to halacha. All these Rabbanim in Eretz Yisrael are saying that if only that, then the Geulah would be here, right? We just have to start building the Beis Hamikdash. So this point one is very, very important because the Rebbe emphasizes the entire time. We could have maybe a hachana, but you cannot say it's called the Geulah until you have your melech. As we saw much earlier, right? The whole idea that the melech is one who's ma'achid da'am. The Beis Hamikdash has to be built with the entire Jewish nation. The melech is the one who unites the people. So that's number one. Number two, go ahead.
גאולה שלמה היא דווקא בבניין המקדש בקיבוץ נדחי ישראל, ועד אז, גם לאחר שעמד מלך בבית דוד וכולי, עדיין גלות היא. Okay, so complete Geulah, it has to be also building the Beis Hamikdash, and that all the Yidden will be in Eretz Yisrael. Until then, even if we have the king, it's still Golus. Okay, ג' עיקר הגאולה הוא במשמעות הפנימית שלה. תיקון העולם במלכות ש"ד י' ומלאה הארץ דעה הוויה, והגאולה החיצונית מעול הגויים באה כתוצאה מהגאולה הפנימית. ולפיכך גם תהליך הגאולה שהרבא מראה, הוא בעיקר תהליך פנימי של התפשטות ידיעת השם בכל העולם, שממנו מסתעפים כל ענייני הגאולה. Okay, so the גאולה in the pneumistic meaning is that this is tikkun olam through knowing Hashem everywhere. And in the external geula from the goyim comes as a result from the internal geula. And that's why the Rebbe says that all the procedure that we have from the geula, it's mainly the procedure that happens inside, internal procedure of spreading Hashem, and from this comes all the other things of the geula. I didn't understand it actually.
In other words, it doesn't start externally. So when we say that there's a process, in the Rebbe's words, a process of Geulah is that internal. The whole point of Geulah is that it's Malchus Hashem. The world will recognize Hashem is the Melech of the entire world. It's Hashem's empire, right? Remember that we learned earlier that the Melech, Beis David, is a representative of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So the whole point of Geulah is that everyone serves Hashem and everyone knows Hashem. So when the Rebbe talks about this process, he's talking about how we see that slowly starting to happen, how people are starting to recognize Hashem, people are starting to acknowledge Hashem. It's about tshuva movement, right? People are coming closer to Hashem, the knowledge of Hashem. Chassidus is spreading throughout the whole world. So that's the pneumistic purpose of Geulah. And the other things are the external things that you can see on the outside, the building of the Beis Hamikdash, Bnei Yisrael coming to Eretz Yisrael, that accompany this getting closer to Hashem and knowing Hashem. Okay? But you can't do it the other way around, as we're going to see in detail. Okay.
Okay. The first point, במקביל לתיאור תהליך הגאולה בשלבים, הרבה מרבה לתאר את ביאת המשיח כהרף עין ברגע כממרה. So, besides, I said במקביל.
In parallel. So at the same time that the Rebbe is describing that Mashiach is going to come in these stages, the Rebbe also says what?
Speaks a lot about Mashiach coming in 1 second. וכשנתבונן נמצא שתיאור הגאולה כתהליך ארוך מתייחס למאורעות העבר בלבד, ואילו כשהרבא מדבר על העתיד, אזי הוא מתאר אותו אך ורק בדרך של גאולה כהרף עין. כפי שהתבררו נקודת בפרטיות יותר לקמן. Okay, so when the Rebbe speaks about a procedure of Geulah that takes generations, this talks about the past. But when the Rebbe speaks about the future, then it talks about it only in a way that it's going to be in 1 second.
Terrifying, right? It's like we say when we in a way, like when we talk about Hashgacha Pratis, like you can look at something that happened and say it was hashgacha pratis. But you can't apply hashgacha pratis to the future and say, oh, I'll sit, I won't do much because it's going to happen. It's going to be hashgacha pratis. It's the same thing. So when you look to the past, what has happened in the past, the Rebbe said, okay, so you see, it's happened this way because it's a process. But the Rebbe never said that the future is a process. The Rebbe always stressed, right? The Mashiach is going to come to Herf Ein right now, right? And at the end of each sikha, the Rebbe would say, and we should bear to see it, take it from Yad Mamish. It was always in this instant. So we have one eye on the way we look at the past, and another eye how we look at the situation going forward. So we're not waiting to see a process, right? We recognize stages in the past, and we want immediate Mashiach to be revealed. May that be taken from Yatak and Mamish. Mr. Shem will continue this in our next week.
Okay, Shkoyach, thank you very much.